Hello and welcome to Access All Areas, brought to you by OPSM. Later in the program, we're going to have Dr. Peter Larkins come in and talk about all the key injuries from the weekend. But with me now to talk about all the big issues from round 14 is Damien Barrett. Welcome to you, Damo.
G'day, Das. And a lot of things to talk about, not least the hatred and anger that's being directed your way from West Coast Eagles supporters. Looking forward to touching on that pretty soon.
We'll get to that in a minute. You don't have to get so excited about the negative comments coming my way, Damo. Got a thick skin. We'll deal with that shortly. We'll keep talking about the year, how exciting it's going to be, and that's been reinforced on the weekend. Look at 8 to 13 on the ladder. North Melbourne find themselves a game clear inside the 8, which is staggering when you think about some of the talk 2 weeks ago. You don't write off St Kilda. Carlton in 10th position, they've got their troubles, but Richmond, Brisbane and Fremantle all absolutely within a chance of making the finals.
Who takes that spot, Das?
Look, I reckon North Melbourne, with that game clear, there's so much to play out. We're just having a massive stab in the dark. But I want to talk about North Melbourne right now, Damo, because last week they beat Adelaide Crows by 32 points. You're a North Melbourne fan, member. How negative were you last week against North Melbourne? You just declared unless they get the job done this week, it means nothing. Well, they got the job done, Damo.
I did reveal a bit of scepticism, which I've still got a bit of, Das. I think if you look at it now, great effort yesterday, really good effort, backing up on the Adelaide win, now St Kilda as well. You throw in the Geelong win in round 3, it starts to look pretty good. West Coast this week, down in Hobart, and then matches against Carlton and Richmond following. I reckon they've got to win 2 of 3 to remove all scepticism. I think they'd be looking at it the same way.
Well, let's go back and talk about the big win yesterday against St Kilda and Damo. There's some history between the two sides.
Yeah, it is. We'll go back to the last game of last year. Nick Rivalry there, collected by Jack Ziebell. Now, make of it what you will. It's pretty crude. He got weeks for it. Not much in it, really, apart from what happens on the footy field sometimes. Now, the reason it is a story, because it gave North Melbourne a motivation. Whatever form it comes in, Das, you just take it and you run with it. And this is what fired North up as a result of that bump. A quote made by Brendan Goddard post that game. We felt that it was a pretty reckless and his intent wasn't really at the footy. That was clearly a big issue going into that game yesterday. Not just that specifically, but what Goddard said about Ziebell, intent not being at the footy. Fast forward through to yesterday, last quarter, an incident off the ball here involving Brendan Goddard himself against Sam Wright. He collects him. Wright does go off the ground at that point and look pretty groggy for a while, but then not long after that, gets a loose ball, wobbly kick, but does goal and then absolutely gives it to Goddard yesterday. It was clearly motivation. North players are going in there at Goddard, and also too, once we see here Sam Wright really giving it to him in a way that seniority is normally not spoken about this way. Normally the lesser player there would have let it go, but Wright went him. Brad Scott, just to wind up this motivation factor for North yesterday, then had this to say about that incident last year and what happened yesterday after the game.
You know, I feel like the parent in the glass box above Etihad watching their kids get bullied in the schoolyard, but now we're starting to stand on our own 2 feet and stand up to the opposition, which is really pleasing. The last year, Brendan Goddard commented on the fact that Jack Ziebell had cannoned into Nick Rivalry and ended up getting suspended, and Brendan had some things to say then. Now, it's not my job to comment on opposition players. I'll just concentrate on my own.
Not my job to do it, but I just have. Brad, you reckon players don't remember, they remember everything and any motivation, as you said. I think it's a great thing for North Melbourne to use the term, we're growing up, we're finally not going to be bullied, and that's where they are at, because they're a young side. You just start to feel as though you've got a bit of strut in the game, and North Melbourne going very nicely.
And sometimes you just need a little hook on a game in a build-up sense, don't you? That hook was what Goddard said about Ziebell. Now, it may have meant nothing, but they decided to make something of it, and when it played out the way it did, they would have played that during the week. They would have had it up on the whiteboard before the game. They would have been reminding everyone, if you can get anything out of it, you use it. Now, we saw the race for the top 8, Damo, before, but have a look at how close it is. You know, search for a top 4 spot, all-important top 4 spot. Collingwood got the game clear, but then look down the list, Sydney, West Coast, Essendon, Adelaide, Hawthorn. That is going to be super, super interesting as we head into the last 8 games of the year. We're looking at 1st to 7th there. Do you lock the Cats in there, Das, in the top 8 sense? Or should we be looking at, as we just did, where it was 8th to 13th? Should it be 7th to 13th even?
I've thought Geelong will make the 8 for a fair while, and I think they're just going to be good enough, even though they didn't really convince us of that against Port Adelaide on the weekend. That middle bracket, though, for top 4 is just interesting, and the difference between Hawthorn finishing 4th or 6th, or
and they're still not
West
in
Coast.
the top 4, Hawthorn, yet they're still premiership favourites. will they make the top 4?
Look, they have to get it right. I've watched Essendon a lot, and I think they're in great form as well. Some big games coming up where they all play each other in the next month, and we'll know a lot more. Hey, probably the biggest story, Damo, out of the weekend is Carlton and Brett Ratten, for obvious reasons. After round 3, they knocked off Collingwood by 60 points, and since then it has been a disaster. There are some obvious reasons for it. When you look at their injury concerns, I reckon 4 of their best 12 players, Murphy and Waite, highlighted by it, aren't in the side. But let's sort of focus on Brett Ratten, because everyone else have. He's coming under fire, Damo. Will he coach the side next year?
I don't think so, Das, but whatever happens between now and next year, it will be allowed to play out over the course of the remaining matches in 2012. I'm convinced that the board will let happen whatever happens. They're not going to react and gut and knee-jerk react to what happens against Collingwood this week, and that could be another 50-point loss, as it was in the Friday just gone to Hawthorn. They've got an easier stretch of matches beyond that point, and they could still make the 8. There's no doubt about that, but convinced that whatever happens to Ratten will be left and parked until after the last game of 2012, be that around 23 game or a first final.
You're very close to Mick Malthouse, Damo. A lot of people are making that link. He has distanced himself from that during the week. Yep. Is that just media scuttlebutt that people are talking about, or is there any legs to that at all? No,
there's massive legs to it, Das, and it goes back to a very close relationship, and you'd even say friendship with Greg Swan, who was formerly at Collingwood, now at Carlton. They're close. They socialise. They socialised as recently as 3 weeks ago with partners. That's what they do. Carlton won't move on Ratten unless they get an indication from Mick Malthouse. They're not going to sack Ratten without Mick being the absolute carrot at the end for them, should they do it. Paul Kreuzer is the other man. He just doesn't have the glint in the eye. He keeps saying it every Monday night on the couch. He doesn't have the want right now to go and do it again. Mick Malthouse or Ratten it is, and Ratten will be allowed to play out this year. So he's still got some time to get it right.
He returned to coaching from the coach's box rather than from the boundary line on the weekend. Was that all of his own choice, or was he lent on by the board and by the players to get back up in the box?
I reckon the best way to describe what's happened there, Das, was he ordered or was he directed? I reckon the best way to describe it, he got the message, go back up there. The players collectively, more of them don't like him down there than do like him down there, and certainly in the eyes of Stephen Kernahan and the board and the administration, they don't like the emotion that he shows down on that ground level. They reckon they get a better, more reasoned view of the game from up top. But he's now second-guessing himself the fact he's gone and done that on Friday night.
And that, to me, is not a great sign. If you are second-guessing the way that you go about it, if you want to coach from the boundary line and you've had other outside influences tell you how to do your job. And we just saw some of that vision of him. And I watched the game on Friday night, and I thought he was actually checking himself. He wanted to celebrate because that's his natural persona. And then I thought, oh, no, the camera's on me. I don't want to give anyone any more ammunition. And that, to me, is a bit of a concern, as though he's lost a bit of confidence in the way he's gone about it.
So you felt he did check himself?
It did look like it to me, whether I'm reading more into it. But he's about to celebrate. He is animated. He loves getting involved. And then, hang on a minute, it looked like his hand went up, and I better just tone it down a bit according to what people want me to do, which is a bit of a worry. Get involved in Twitter. AFL_AAA is the address. Delta has tweeted us about the Blues. She says Carlton fans will vote with their feet and not turn up to Carlton versus Collingwood on Friday night. And she says Ratten has to go. Delta, go to the game. Footy's great. You're playing against the old enemy, Collingwood. Let's hope that's not the case. But
you don't want supporters like that, Das, seriously, do you? I mean, to make a protest vote against the coach on a big game. What if they win against Collingwood? It's all turned around.
And we've seen in recent weeks that's just exactly what happens. The unlikely victory is just as likely to happen. Now, Matthew Kreuzer, someone, Damo, I think we need to talk about. His form not great at all, and we'll take a look at some of the vision here.
What should he be doing here, Das? He misses out here, but what's he done wrong there? Is it just a fatigue thing, or what is it, with Hale taking that mark?
Look, it's just that body contact and that absolute unbelievable aggression to make sure that your opponent doesn't get that extra metre in a crucial stage on the ground. Now,
another one here.
Never question him not trying, but when your confidence drops, all of a sudden, that just has to come to ground. It's not his opponent, but when you're in good form,
he doesn't get near it, does.
You just have to smash the body, make sure rough head. Worst case scenario, if you give away a free kick, but at least you give some impression. Now, everything's going horribly wrong when the ball smashes you in the face and you clean miss it. He's just out of touch. Now, a lot of people at the game will call Matthew Kreuzer, and it's Kreuzer is the voice that you hear, but a lot of people tell me that was the Bronx cheers.
People at the ground were saying that's what it was.
Carlton fans had turned on him by the end of the game. Now, I've got a theory that he was number 1 draft pick, Matthew Kreuzer, and drafted as the best ruckman in the country. He hasn't really ever been allowed to play there for an extended period of time. They're trying to turn him into a gun key forward, which I don't think he's ever going to be. It's a 70-30 role, Damo. 70% the ruck, 30% forward. And they've got Hampson, they've got Warner. I feel like they're obliged to play those guys in there because they can't do the other role as well.
So the way through for him now is to play in the ruck, more so than he has been.
Pinch hit up forward, but he's not a key forward. He's not going to be a full forward or centre forward. Yep. He's coming back from a knee reconstruction. Doc Larkin's going to join us shortly, and we'll get out of him 5 operations he's had in 5 years. He's got to play his natural role. Just playing the ruck, get him in good form. You're not getting a good forward, you're not getting a good ruckman, and potentially you're hurting him on both areas. What
about your odd boys, Das, the Bulldogs, sitting 14th on the ladder and really not going anywhere at the moment? They've had 4 really bad losses out of the 8 they've had. The kids were left out of this game. Well, 2 of the kids with names in inverted commas, Cordy and Wallace. What was your take on Brendan McCartney and the selection panel leaving kids out of a game on the weekend when other clubs are looking and using this time of the year to get some games into their potential stars in the future?
Initially, my response is I was surprised. I thought both those players have been playing pretty well. Mitch Wallace is almost a favourite for that rising star, and Ace Cordy developing really nicely. And I haven't had this conversation, but when you've got young players in their first and second year, managing their amount of output is a really important thing. And if you play them week in, week out, and you notice they're fatigued and they get injured and they drop their confidence. So I get the feeling that may have been, without knowing, a rotation out as much as it was a selection out.
Roughhead was made the substitute. In a year where it's already been talked about, they're not going well up forward in terms of big men up there. I mean, what's the logic behind that?
Well, again, it's a rebuilding phase. He's had some good weeks. He's had some weeks where he's struggled, Jordan Roughhead, and I think it's just a management of time. Now, they know that better than anyone else. At the moment, is he capable of playing 22 outstanding games? He's not. They're trying to develop him into that role. They are young. They're going to have times where they're struggling.
It's not working out the way they wanted it to. There are reasons for that, as you've outlined. Let's have a look at their performances, though, against the teams in the top 8. 1 win, the Bulldogs, and 7 losses. That 1 win being a win against North Melbourne. Their percentage in those games is 63%. It's not markedly better than the club we're looking at and ridiculing regularly, the Suns. They've got 0 wins, 6 losses and 55%. Just have a look at this too, Dust, before you, Sonny. Good numbers there on disposals, clearances and contested possessions. Inside 50 is okay. The damning one is what they do with it once it's inside 50. It's terrible.
And I think that's a good summation of where they're at as a football club. I had them, Damo, in my mind being in the bottom half of the ladder, probably the bottom 4 as they are. Brendan McCartney's focus on being good around the contest there. I think you had him number 1. He's focused on their defensive part of their game, probably at the expense of attacking flair. They were that under Rodney Eade. And they've got a forward line that consists of Roughhead, Ace Cordy, Liam Jones. Their marquee player is Luke Dalehouse, who's off the rookie list and playing his 30th game. They don't have the cattle at all to compete inside the forward half of the ground. That's why they can't convert, they can't score.
Are they on the right track?
Well, I think they are. I think Brendan McCartney is super impressive. I've actually never met Brendan McCartney, but saw some behind-the-scenes stuff here on the weekend. Yep. I think the language is right. The real worry for me is membership, which is down this year, attendances, which are down horribly, and that affects the bottom line of a club like the Western Bulldogs, and that to me is more of a concern. They need their supporters to engage in the club more than they are at the moment.
Das, last week on this show, Access All Areas, you brought to the attention of the footy world the prevalence of some Eagles players to throw the ball, what looked like to be thrown. Now,
well received?
Well received, and very well received by the clubs, and some pressure brought on the umpiring department, but the Eagles supporters have just lined up. We're going to show you 3 or 4 of them now, but rest assured there's at least another 50 we're not going to show you. But Ryan hammers 7. Darcy is a gutter journalist at best. His hate of West Coast Eagles shouldn't be associated with the league if you ever want to shake the VFL tag.
Now, I want to answer that, Ryan. I've got a thick skin and I'm open to any insult you want to throw at, but to call me a journalist is one of the most insulting, low-rent things
that
has ever been. Well, what it does, it associates me with the likes of Damien Barrett and Hutchie and the real scumbags in our industry. So I won't cop that, Ryan. That's one I can't have.
Deal with Vanessa's tweet, Das. Darcy did the entire Eagles squad kick your dog or something. Hashtag try and hide your hate. Reporting should be unbiased. And if you want to be a journalist, be unbiased.
Well, I thought they used to like me in the West, don't they? But I think that's gone out the window.
Stefan's wound up.
Oh,
Part 1,
Steph.
this is of Stefan. You guys are seriously clutching at straws. Massive high-pressure game. If you look long enough, you realise hashtag not just Eagles. I think he's right, Das.
Well, they're onto something.
St Kilda did it yesterday too. He didn't highlight their flaws. Schneider threw the ball to Milne at one stage yesterday.
Well, there was a pattern of throws.
And Stefan's wound up again.
He's going again, is he, Steph?
He's gone again. Sounds like the folk in Melbourne are just having another whinge. Slow news day. I think it might have been a bit dust.
Keep the tweets coming, Damo. We appreciate the feedback. AFL_AAA is the address, and there's a few more that have just come through. We asked, what have you learnt from the weekend? And Leon says North Melbourne are quietly flying under the radar, whilst West Coast will be the test to see if they can tangle with the top 4. I give North Melbourne a massive chance down there in Tasmania this weekend.
Nat Nui flying and Cox flying.
Well, Nat Nui has got a real concern, Damo, because he wants to wear a long-sleeve jumper. This is some inside information you won't hear anywhere else apart from right here. The players fine you for wearing a long-sleeve jumper. So
the
he's going to be,
players do.
Yes, internally. So he's going to be too cold to perform at his best down there. They're coming out of the west into the freezing cold of Tassie. North are in good form. I reckon they're a big chance. David says, greetings from Thailand. We've gone international, Damo. We learnt Kieran Jack has a lethal left foot and Lewis Jetta could run in the Olympics. A couple of good calls there.
Is he Brownlow smoker, Kieran Jack?
I'll tell you what, I'm not sure he's going to poll as heavily as some others, but he's gone into the category of being an unbelievably consistent performer and rate him really highly. Good story coming from a rugby league background. This one from Pricey says, we learnt that Taylor Walker has become a sniper, #week. Maybe a little bit over the top, Pricey. I think you're referring to a tackle here on young Stephen Morris. Now, this has got a fair bit of news coverage across the weekend. It's not a great technique, that one, and in fact it's a dangerous one. If you're playing rugby league, Taylor Walker, there wouldn't be a question. You would find yourself 3 or 4 weeks out of the grunt.
Well, there shouldn't be a question in AFL either, should there? He has to get weeks, given he's done something very similar to Harry Taylor at the same venue earlier this season.
The match review panel, I understand, are looking at it and will look at it. I think he's going to be in a little bit of trouble. Always there on benefit of the doubt, the player-wise, but it is dangerous, you know. Morris got up, which is great. So maybe a week. I think he'd probably at least get a week for that, Taylor Walker.
Dale Thomas last week had a crack at Jack Darling and came off second best in a bump. He did it again on the weekend. So he's throwing his weight around on Ryan Crowley. Bottom of screen, darts across the ground, hits Crowley, but unfortunately also hits his teammate Beams. Now, just again, slow it down here, hits Crowley, cannons into Beams. Beams goes off for 4 or 5 minutes and actually had the concussion test on this one, does.
It's not quite getting the job done there, Dale Thomas, but that's what the good clubs do, is they genuinely go and protect their players that are being tagged. So Dale Thomas...
Is he the right man to be doing it?
Probably not. You leave that, maybe get Swanee or one of the bigger boys in there to sort that one out. Hey, time for our OPSM poll question, Damo. Head to our AFL Facebook page to register your vote on who has the best mullet in the AFL. Is it Ivan Marich, Jesse Crichton or Taylor Walker? We'll have the results on the poll on Friday's Access All Area with Damo and Lethal. Now, have a look. There's Ivan on the left. Jesse Crichton's got an unbelievable...
He's come hard with this race, Jesse Crichton.
He looks like a sheep that hasn't been shorn or something's gone horribly wrong. And Taylor Walker, no surprise to me that there's 2 South Australians and a Tasmanian, Damo. Your fair share of mullets across those 2 states. We've got to wrap it up now, Damo. Coming up next, Dr. Peter Larkins is going to give us the update on the injury news from the weekend. But now it is time for our OPSM. Did you see that?
Round 14, when we saw Mackay nail this one from just inside the 50.
This hasn't been a game, it's been a fracture.
And Palmer's great mark.
He might have grabbed from Palmer.
There were some clips you may not have seen. Foggy boxes.
Things are starting to fog up in the box.
Burnouts.
That's hard to believe.
And bubbles. The top clips you missed from a week of ball-flinging fun. This is Did You See That? Clip 1. Here, Collingwood fans enjoyed this display of speed, agility and teamwork in their victory against Fremantle.
Delivery to Thomas, A1.
While everyone else enjoyed this.
Crosses the arc. And it's fair to say, he disappoints himself.
Clip 2. Gold Coast continue to struggle this season. Not helped by this drop kick.
That's just come out of Bloopersville.
Yep.
Clip 3. Did you see this heavy collision in the final quarter that had this magpie struggling for air?
We've got an injury.
And commentators struggling for words.
Jackson Payne, who's riling in pain.
Clip 4. Essendon versus the Bulldogs was full of high-flying action. But did you see this guy?
This bang, Falcon himself. Just a little bit late putting the hands together.
Clip 5. Nowadays, with the AFL brought to you in high definition, it looks like the ball is being kicked right at you.
It's launched, it hit the camera behind the goals. It's a big launch, there it goes, right in.
Clip 6. Travis Cloak is still yet to re-sign with the Pies. Did you see this gentle persuasion offered from his coach?
Oh boy, that hurts.
Expect a deal announced any day now. To vote for your favourite Did You See That moment and to have the chance to win a pair of Oakley sunglasses valued at $159.95, go to afl.com.au/Did You See That.